Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the role that your intuition plays in decision making. And I will share a personal story here where lately there has been something that I keep revisiting, a decision that I keep going back to over and over and over again. I make it and then I question it, and I make it and then I question it. And as I was driving this weekend and I was heading to go visit with my dad, I realized I need to change this. I need to approach the way I'm doing this differently. And the answer's been kind of right in front of my face, but I had 2 separate things that really need to come together and be one thing. It'll be much simpler. It'll be much more valuable. And it struck me that the reason I've been re-questioning that decision over and over and over again is because it wasn't quite right. My intuition was trying to tell me that there was something off about it, and I just couldn't see it yet. But as I kept sitting with it and thinking about it and gave myself space, I find when I'm driving in the car, I get some of my best ideas. I don't know if that happens to you as well. So it struck me on this drive. And since then, I've been thinking through it a little bit more and processing it and realizing, yes, this makes so much sense. This is what it should be. And so one of those things that I recognize in myself, and it took me a lot of years to recognize this, is when I do things that are uncharacteristic for me, that is when my intuition is trying to get my attention. And if you think about for you, when does someone say, that's so not like her, or that's so not like him? When do you hear that? Like, usually you're so this, but why in this situation are you this? Maybe someone else is asking you that. Maybe you're asking yourself that, right? Like, I'm very, very decisive. I'm very quick on decisions. I know a lot of people can deliberate a long time on decisions. I'm not. I fully believe that you just take action, and any action is better than inaction because you can always course correct and you can always change your mind, assuming it's not like a big major life changing decision, of course. But if they're just decisions on what you do in your business, what you call things, how you structure things, you just move forward and you learn and you adapt as you go. So I'm usually really decisive and really quick to move things forward. And when I find myself spinning a bit, when I find myself consistently revisiting the same thing over and over again, as I shared, I've learned that that is my intuition trying to tell me it's just not quite right. It's not quite there yet. It might be fine, but it can be better. It can be more valuable. It can be something, or it's not going to sit right for me, or it's not going to hit the market the way that I expect it to. And so what are those things for you? Does it show up for you in decision making? And again, if you tend to be a deliberator, if you tend to be someone who thinks things through for a really long time, then that right there is what's characteristic for you. So what is uncharacteristic for you? For me, it's uncharacteristic to keep deliberating and keep thinking things through and keep revisiting. And my team has recognized this. Jessica's gotten really good at saying, there's something not right about this because you keep coming back to it. And sometimes she can see it even before I can see it. And that's one of the brilliant things about having a really strong right-hand person who knows you and knows your vision and really has your best interests and the business best interests as their core driver. So I'm super grateful for her for recognizing those things in me sometimes before I recognize them. So maybe you have people around you, whether it's your right-hand person or a business bestie or even a coach or mentor who is able to look at and say, there's something not quite right here. And so I feel like our intuition shows up in different ways. But when you make a decision, any kind of decision, there's always a feeling afterwards. Sometimes it's a feeling of relief, like, "I needed to do that so long ago, why did I wait? I just did this, I made a change on my team, and it was such a feeling of relief after I made it." As much as I will so miss this person and I loved working with them, and there's so many positives, it also had been time to make a change for a while, and you make a decision, and all of a sudden you realize, "Wow, it really was time." And so it's the decisive action that gives you that feeling of relief. Sometimes you make a decision and you have a feeling of fear, like, "Oh, I really hope I made the right decision here. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Is that the right thing?" But it's a natural reaction. It's you needing to step into that next level of yourself or that next level of your business. It's not something that's off. It's just something that you're like, "Ooh, all right. I'm gonna have to really show up here. I'm gonna have to really challenge myself here." And it's something that's more of a growth feeling that gives you that fear or gives you that questioning or gives you that almost second guessing if you made the right decision. That's different. Sometimes things just don't feel right. And you make a decision because you know you need to move forward or you know you should move forward, but you keep coming back to it and keep coming back to it and keep coming back to it. I was doing a training in our Soul Collective, which is my community for those who work with business founders. So, whether you're a coach or a consultant or a strategic advisor or an operational leader, it's the community there where we really look at strategy and operations leadership. And this is something I was talking about there is when you have a founder that keeps going back and keeps revisiting something as that person who's working with them, to you, it can be super frustrating. You're like, "Really? I thought we made this decision. Why are we not moving? Oh, we're really gonna talk about this again?" Like, it can feel that way to your team sometimes if you're doing this, or if you're the one working with someone who keeps revisiting something. To you, you might see the path forward so crystal clearly. But if that person keeps revisiting and keeps revisiting and keeps bringing it up, what I shared in Soul Collective is it's one of 2 things that's happening. Either it's not quite right for them. It's their intuition that's trying to tell them, "Hey, we need to take a fresh look at this. It isn't quite right the way that it is today. There's something that needs to shift about it." Or maybe it's not right at all. Or maybe they just don't fully understand it yet. And they keep bringing it up because they don't see what you see. They don't yet see exactly how things connect together or how things stitch together or how this one action that they take is going to have the domino effect that they need to get the results that they want. And so it's really helpful, I think, to understand how to trust our own intuition, but it's also really helpful to understand when it's someone else's intuition, when it's fear that's showing up for someone else, or when it's just part of that natural reaction to things that we sometimes have when we make decisions. It's really helpful if you are advising a founder in any capacity or if that is you that's making decisions. But again, I wanted to share the story about how I've learned how my intuition shows up for me, especially when it comes to decision making, because we know as business owners, we make so many decisions in a day. And some of them are little things that we're barely even conscious of. Some of them are really pretty important things. And I think that if we can recognize how to balance that internal knowing, that intuition that we have with doing the smart data driven decisions and looking at things and all of that, we can be much stronger leaders and we can move our business forward a whole lot faster. Well, data is incredibly valuable and super useful. Sometimes, when you have just such a deep knowledge of your industry, or you've been in business for as many decades as I have, right? Whatever your level of experience is, sometimes you can just see things before there's evidence of it in the data that you're seeing. You might be able to feel a market shift because you can see the patterns. You've lived through this before. You've seen the patterns that are building up, and so you kinda know what's coming, even though the data tells you to go in this direction, you just intuitively know, "No, we really should go in this direction because I think this is gonna be happening." And sometimes we don't have data to pull from. Sometimes we're ideating something and coming up with something from scratch. There is no data to rely on, and so what do we have to rely on but our intuition? I find the best and most successful businesses tend to have a blend of both. They don't ignore data in favor of intuition, or they don't ignore intuition in favor of data. They understand how to blend the both of them together. And so I'm curious for you, how does your intuition show up? Does it show up in decision making in the way that it does for me? Does it show up in other ways for you? How does it end up guiding how you're moving your business forward? This would be a great thing to pull out your journal and reflect on if you don't already know, because I find this makes a really big difference in moving forward. And just a tip before we wrap up here is if you know the way that it shows up for you, be sure to share that with the people who are guiding you and supporting you. Whether you have a right hand who's taking that vision and making things happen in the business for you, or whether you have, like I said, a coach or a consultant or a mentor, make sure that they have that insight as well, because they will be able to recognize it in you sometimes before you see it. And that will just help you get better results a whole lot faster and ensure everything stays in alignment for you. I hope you got a lot of value out of this episode. I will see you again next week. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. I hope you got a lot of value and actionable insights from today's show and would love if you take a moment to leave us a review. If you have any questions on today's episode or on how to lean out your business, join us over in our private Facebook community where every week we do live training and Q&A, and I'd love to have you be part of the conversation. Head to leanoutmethod.com/group to join us. And before you go, be sure to subscribe to the show so you're the first to know when we release a new episode. We'll see you next week.